What behaviours do you think of as leadership qualities, and do you think any gender differences are still evident?
I do think there's a real myth about if you're a female leader, you need to be aggressive. I don't see that. I've had more female bosses than I've had male bosses. Absolutely come across male bosses and female bosses that have been aggressive. But actually, really, I think that comes from the corporate culture. I think looking at companies and where there is an aggressive leadership style throughout an organisation, if you're going to be successful there, maybe you feel you need to adapt to that, and you need to sort of follow that corporate culture. But I do think it's a real myth between sort of saying that women have to be aggressive to be a successful leader. I don't see that. I think the experience that people have will always give you a level of how to behave. I think training, mentoring, and probably parenting at some point in people's lives really make you the person that you are. For me, the key thing is all about being yourself. Be yourself, be honest, know what your values are, and really stick with your values. I think you need to be adaptable as a leader. You certainly need to adapt to different situations, different styles, different people that you work with. But the key thing there is really about being yourself and be true to yourself. There's a lot of disruption and change out there at the moment, and as we all know, pandemic has caused a number of different changes in how we work and things that we have to do, and styles that we probably now have to adapt to be working remotely, working completely away from our colleagues. I think the key thing is about leading with empathy, be inclusive, but listen to what people are telling you. Take the moment to be quiet and listen to what other people in your team are saying, listen to what other leaders are saying. If you don't listen, you're not going to be successful.
The question about leadership characteristics and whether these differ between men and women is a question that comes up a lot. I think this is something that is ingrained really early on as children develop. And for example, the use of the word bossy is generally seen as a negative thing for young girls, but actually, is that right? And shouldn't we be saying, great, we have young girls who are assertive, and how do we nurture that? For me, thinking about the workplace, there's a couple of key things, and that's leaders who are inclusive in order to be able to make the best decisions, and who are able to both listen and communicate their ideas and their visions. In this regard, company culture absolutely does impact. Key questions that I think are important to look at are: how does a leader deal when they've gone wrong? Is it shouting and blaming versus asking how do we learn how not to do that again? Another key question is how to deal with things when they go right. Does the leader take the credit and ascribe it all to themselves, or is it actually then seen as an opportunity to share credit, but importantly also ask the question, what led to that success and what can we learn from it?
From my experience, I think women leaders tended to have been more well-rounded leaders. Again, a very big generalization, and some people might not agree, but I have had extremely good male mentors. One of my biggest and favorite male mentors and supporters is a man, and he's great. But I think women leaders tended to have been less concerned about the KPI or target as the primary focus. Rather, they wanted to see you grow professionally as well as in excelling your job. So, in focusing primarily on your growth and your well-being, the KPIs and the targets, that naturally came with. Because you're enjoying your job, you're enjoying working with your teammates, you want to do well, so naturally you do well.
As the workplace looks to become more meritocratic, what skill sets or experience would you recommend younger people get on their CV to set them up well for career advancement? What about for older people who feel they are stuck or are returning to work after taking time out to care for children or elderly relatives?
I think the key skills and experience to try and develop very much depends on your ambitions and the direction that you want your career to go. I think at the early stages of your career, it's very difficult to try and say, absolutely, this is a course that I should do, or this is what's going to take me to where I want to be. But I also think that the most important thing is trying to find ways which you can differentiate against other potential applicants. Are there potentials for internships or any other learning you can do online over and above, the honours and masters and the variety of different courses that are available that are more structured learning? And I think one of the things that makes me really passionate about the HBA is we spend a lot of time focusing on the softer skills. So our career conversations, as well as our programming plan, is all looking about, courage and resilience, leading with gravitas, to name just a few of the kind of key topics that have been in focus over the past year or so. And I think one of the other things that's really important as well is to actually look at opportunities. If you actually decide, this is a direction I want to go in, look on LinkedIn and see exactly, how, people who are in these roles, what was their career path and journey like to get there? What did they do? How did they differentiate? And, is that something that you're really looking to do? And network, speak to people in these roles. One of the things we did over the summer was actually matching. We identified 8 leaders in different fields who were members and volunteers with the HBA, and actually matched with people who needed some support in their career, either with interviewing or developing their CV, and really trying to understand, what they needed to do or where there were any gaps. Because I think ultimately, any feedback is positive. And any opportunity is positive. If you're looking at an opportunity and, you try it and you don't like it, then you learn exactly what you don't want, which is sometimes just as important as learning what you do. So, and I also think that when you're looking at your next steps, you should be looking, not just at that step, but how longer term does it take you, further down the career path and where you actually want to be at the end of the day. Does this potential opportunity give you the opportunity for new learnings, to develop new skills, to work in a slightly different field, to meet with people who, you're keen to learn from, and experts? I think that's something that's, absolutely key when you're looking at, your next career step, whatever stage you are in your career. And I think, once you get to the stage and, you're, older and you've had some experience, if you start to feel a bit stuck, again, I think it's networking, reaching out to people, asking, for meetings and coffees and things like that to really help, take some learnings back and understand, what the difference, what you need to do differently to be more successful in that role, or changing direction and learning what the actual role really is like before you actually find yourself employed going, oh, this is not what I expected or what I wanted. And I think one of the questions regarding, what makes a good leader is, I think the answer is exactly the same as what makes a good employee. I think you've got to be accountable, and you've got to, work with integrity and with trust, and, be really committed. But I think one of the most important things in a leader nowadays is to absolutely empower your team. I think the days of, standing over people and making sure if they're being effective are gone. If you're hiring well, then your team are motivated, and empowering them to be successful, I think, is a really good and really strong reflection on you as a leader that you're doing a great job.
For me, I made the conscious decision to not go down the specialist's path by choosing to go into business as someone who came from a scientific background. I have a master's degree in oncology. My supervisors at the end of my master's asked me if I want to go into a PhD program, and I politely said, maybe I'll come back. So also I have hands-on business experience, but no formal business degree. So I sometimes, really feel like I'm sort of in the middle, neither this nor that. And I'd be lying if I said that this never made me insecure. But the crossroads between science and business is where I always wanted to be. And having chosen this path and run for it has helped me create a niche for myself as well, in the middle ground. This is how I feel about my future as well. Although I know the general direction in which I'm headed, I don't really have a detailed structure in mind. So questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? They're the most difficult questions for someone like me. Sometimes I feel solid and excited about the vast possibility of all the things that I can choose or career paths that I can have. But at the same time, I feel worried that there isn't a set career path for me, and I don't know if things will work out. So really, it's neither this nor that. My feelings about my career plan, or the lack thereof, is constantly changing. But I'm okay with that because I've always been this kind of person that's comfortable with being uncomfortable. So this is okay with me for now.
Colleagues or contacts with different or more experience can be a great help in our careers, be that as casual advisors, professional coaches, mentors, or sponsors. What experience have you had with this type of support, and how has it helped you? Particularly, if you've had mentors and/or sponsors, how have you found them? And has it made a difference whether they're a man or a woman?
I've never really had a mentor, no one that's labelled as a mentor. I've had lots of mentoring and I've had lots of support throughout my career. If I think back, I've probably had fairly equal support, both from male and female mentors. What I tend to do is, although I've never really asked anyone to be my mentor, I do tend to ask a lot of questions and I do tend to ask for support, usually in a timely way around a particular scenario. And I will try and make sure I'm getting a mixed view. So I actually like the fact that I use several different people for my own mentoring. I think it's important to get balance, and different people have been through different experiences. They've been through different challenges in work, life, etc. So with that comes a different viewpoint, and it doesn't really matter whether it's male or female. And I think that's that's not really important, but the key thing for anybody that you're asking for support of is really to trust them. And I think trusting that person, trusting that they're not going to judge you, trusting that they're going to be able to give you an honest viewpoint and really take the time to consider what you're asking for support from. Ultimately, at times when you're asking for support, you are laying yourself out there and you're making yourself slightly vulnerable. You might be admitting to a concern, a worry, a weakness, and you absolutely need to trust the person that you're having that discussion with. I think the key thing for me is always ask for help, but you don't have to have it labelled as a mentor. Ask for help, ask for support, and pick the people that you want, that you see as good leaders and that you want their advice from. That's really critical.
So throughout the course of my career at all stages, I've had a number of people who've offered support, either colleagues or friends, but there's been a couple of times where I've actually had more professional input. So I had a professional coach at one time when I was transitioning into a role, much more senior role, and was really looking to make sure that I was an authentic leader, but also that a lot of the anxiety and insecurity that I'd had throughout my career was being addressed, and therefore I didn't take all this history with me into the role. So I had about 4 or 5 sessions of professional coaching and worked very closely, would highly recommend it to everybody. And I remember starting the conversation, somebody who I'd known for a very, very long time, who'd actually recruited me into the industry initially, was my professional coach. She has her own business now. And I remember saying, look, I don't know if I need a therapist or a coach. And her kind of smiling and saying, look, it's pretty much the same thing. So after having a number of sessions, I felt a lot more confident and in control. And I knew exactly how to be more assertive and have more belief in, my capabilities, having gone over all the different successes that I'd had in my career and focusing on those as opposed to the times when I maybe wasn't as perfect as I thought that I should have been. I have a number of mentors, people who I've worked with for a number of years. Some of them probably don't even know that they're my mentors, but these are people, and I have one in particular who's always a really sound, rational, sounding board. So we probably try to connect twice a year over lunch or just via TC now. I've known him for a very long time. And he really brings a kind of calm and rational perspective if I'm struggling with specific issues, to either say, yes, Ashley, this is, exactly, the way that you're seeing it, or have you maybe considered this from a different perspective? And I think we all need that, somebody who we trust implicitly, who's going to give us a very clear answer, to make sure that we're not overreacting or, misinterpreting. And finally, I actually have been a mentor. The HBA runs a mentoring program. And I think last year we had over 200 people get paired up, either as a mentee or a mentor, from all different areas of all around the world, all different companies. And I had a wonderful 9 months, with my mentee. I think I learned probably just as much as she did. Thoroughly enjoyed it, would highly recommend it. And I'm very much looking forward to participating again. So if you're interested in that initiative run by the HBA, please don't hesitate to get in touch and see how you can help, or if you want to be a mentee, how you can be helped.
Outside the standard working hours, ability to travel and development of so-called social capital can impact perceptions of people and their career progression. Historically, it was more difficult for women to participate in these activities, either due to exclusion or responsibilities at home. Do you think they still matter today, and is everyone equally enabled to participate?
One piece of advice that I would like to give my younger self would be about the importance of having a really solid network. I think networking is often associated with the idea of career progression, but actually having a network is really important for getting a range of opinions, a range of perspectives, and finding out information that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to know. Social capital is very important, and I think this is just within daily work as well as networking and career progression. I think the actual way you build your network and build that social capital is interesting. I think breakfasts and dinners can be more difficult when you've got commitments such as childcare or responsibilities at home. And it definitely requires support from spouses, family and friends to help you make the most of those networking opportunities. What's interesting now is in a COVID era where we're all working from home or working online, there's a certain level of democratization of those opportunities because people don't have to travel out of hours in order to contact people. However, how you build your social capital using those online platforms is an evolving area, and we all need to see how we use those platforms for the best of it.
So with regards to developing social capital, I think that's one area where our industry has really changed since I started my career. When I began as a medical rep all those years ago, we used to have KPIs for eating out and dining and entertaining prescribers and decision makers, and even away days and things like that, which you certainly couldn't do in our industry nowadays. I think there's a number of other industries where that's still undertaken, but certainly not within pharma. And I think from a developing of relationships perspective, I think that is where the social capital really is the most important. So either internally or externally, taking the time to build strong relationships with your colleagues and clients is absolutely key. So I think going for coffee and things like that is absolutely acceptable. Certainly something I do day to day in my role and under normal circumstances. But I also think that COVID has very much leveled this playing field. Even with regards to business interactions, having face-to-face meetings, being able to travel and have those coffees has certainly changed, never mind from a social perspective, and doing all the dinners and entertaining and things, which I don't really think exist in our industry apart from, outside conferences, or if there's kind of key meetings and events throughout the year that tend to be linked to, existing business and ongoing projects. With regards to who gets to attend, I don't think there's any barriers with regards to gender parity. I think that, the childcare issue and who looks after the children, it's perfectly acceptable now for, partners to very much take a strong role in that. I know that my husband puts up with me jetting off all over the place under normal circumstances and doesn't complain too much. In his role, he travels as well, and I think it's just about having a very clear plan, sharing a calendar, and understanding, that if you say you have to be somewhere, you have to be somewhere, but being really honest and with regards to the level of priority. And I know certainly with regards to early on, when my children were a lot younger, the social capital side of things really wasn't a priority, not because of any barriers due to childcare, but just because a lot of the time you're so tired that the last thing you want to do at the end of a busy work day is, go out for a late dinner. You want to really focus on your family and relaxing and hopefully getting some sleep at some point.